which was equipped only with a dummy gun, across the road in order to force the enemy tanks to halt.
He was bold. He was a good commander.
We slipped out of our tank, unseen by the Russians. Sneaking up to the tanks, we put magnetic charges on 2 T-34s and jumped into cover. Detonations rang through the night. We fetched 2 more magnetic charges and put them in place.
The blankets were taken away, and we started firing at them. It was a great success for us there. We brought down a lot of Russians.
Becker's gamble pays off. With their flank now secure, the SS swing right to mop up one of the last lines of defense at the village of Prokhorovka before their final advance on Kursk. But what the Germans don't yet know is that 500 tanks of the Soviet 5th Guards Tank Army are blocking their way. And the biggest battle in the history of armored warfare is about to begin. The steppes of southern Russia. Today, a gently rolling landscape of wheat and rye fields. In 1943, a battlefield, offering little cover and no place to hide for a 60-ton tank. July 11th, 1943. Day 7 of Operation Citadel. The SS Panzer Grenadier divisions have blasted a hole 50 kilometers through the Soviet defenses. And the Battle of Kursk is about to come to a climax of unbelievable violence. The Soviet 5th Guards Tank Army has been held in reserve more than 100 kilometers behind the front lines. But fearing that all might be lost in the face of the German onslaught, they are now rushed into action to the south of Kursk and prepare to launch a massive counteroffensive on the Germans' right flank from the village of Prokhorovka. At precisely the same moment, the SS swings east, also towards Prokhorovka. Neither side is aware of what the other one is doing, and almost by accident, the stage is set for the deciding tank battle of the Eastern Front. Evening, July 11th. From his command post at Prokhorovka, Soviet Lieutenant General Rotmistrov, commander of the 5th Guards Tank Army, spies tanks in the distance. At first, he thinks they are advance units of his own Soviet T-34s. But then, he gets a surprise.
He took binoculars and saw that those were German tanks. It turns out that the Germans decided to carry out their offensive through Prokhorovka.
Events have outpaced the Soviet plans for a counterattack. Now they must prepare to meet the German SS head-on.
We had a very heavy feeling on our souls. By the order of the main commander general, we were to stay and fight to the death and not let the enemy take over Prokhorovka.
July 12th, dawn. The rumbling of tanks' engines can be heard from miles around as 300 German tanks and 500 Soviet T-34s prepare for battle. From behind a railway embankment on the Russian left flank, Savily Ilyich commands a Soviet anti-tank gun emplacement. and at 0830 hours is one of the first to spot the massed ranks of the SS advancing.
The entire field of Prokhorovka was covered with moving tanks. We aimed at the bottom of the tank or towards the lid of the tank. If the little cross mark was resting on either of those points, then the missile would go directly where it's aimed. It won't sway to the right or left. It will go directly to the target. The 76mm gun would have 25 shots per minute. And that's how you could battle with the tanks through direct aiming.
You were learning quickly during this war. For example, we were all able to tell the difference whether it was a heavy artillery or light artillery firing at us. We were able to hear if anti-tank guns were fired. Every projectile made a different noise. It was very important to recognize what was firing and where it was coming from.
Schießt und woher es kommt.
And the armor-piercing ammo had a special mass inside it. When it collided with armor, it would burn through and through.
The Soviet armor-piercing shell has a high explosive filler designed to pierce 55 millimeters of armor plating at a distance of 1,000 meters, exploding on impact and destroying the enemy tank from within.
The tank would go up in flames. Fire would burn, and that's what would happen.
When several of our tanks had been shot, men suffered terrible burns. A tank on my left side caught fire, and they were screaming terribly. The tankers who made it out had terrible burns on the upper body down to the belt. It was frightful.
North of the railway embankment, in the center of the battlefield, Tank Commander Rudolf von Ribbentrop is in the first wave of the German advance towards Prokhorovka, when the Soviets take the extraordinary and reckless decision to meet them head-on.
What I saw left me speechless. From beyond the shallow rise, about 150 to 200 meters in front of me, appeared tank after tank, wave after wave. There were too many to count. It was a simply unimaginable assembly, and it was moving at a very high speed.
And suddenly, we're on the same path, face to face. They didn't expect us to come upon them so fast, and we didn't expect them either.
The SS adopt the Panzerkeil, a wedge-shaped formation with Tigers at the point and lighter Panzer IVs at the side. Their aim to use their heavy armor to bulldoze straight through the enemy lines. Soviet T-34s lead a cavalry charge across the open fields to meet the deadly Panzerkeil. Outgunned by the Tigers, their only hope is to get as close as possible, as quickly as possible.
They probably thought we would be farther off, but no. Here, there were two huge masses colliding. And at first, everyone was sort of confused and dumbfounded.